Welcome back to the Grease Goblins Rereads channel. Today's video, we're going to be doing Arya 9, A Clash of Kings, or for you guys that don't know, this is the Weasel Soup chapter of A Clash of Kings. It's one of my favorites of the entire series, especially of A Clash of Kings, and it's kind of a sombering feeling. I talked about in the last Catelyn and Bran chapters. We're kind of coming down to the end of A Clash of Kings, where outside of our King's Landing plot and maybe our Jon plot, we're kind of working our way down to the last two, maybe the last chapter of character stories. And for Arya, that's no different. And Arya was such a main focus, especially of, I would say, more the opening half of A Clash of Kings. Now, throughout the last, say, 20-ish chapters of the book, she has this chapter, and then her last one, which is breaking out of Harrenhal. It's a really interesting feeling that we're getting a lot closer towards the end, but let's not waste a lot of time. This is a long chapter. It's not as long as other chapters in this book, specifically the prologue, but I do have a 16-page script, which usually tells me probably at least an hour-long video, so let's get into it. As we get into page 507, Hot Pie needs bread in the kitchen at night, arms floured up to his elbows. Paya saw something in the buttery last night, claiming that there are ghosts, as Arya dismisses, noting Paya always sees things there, usually men. I do want to point this out. You think about Hot Pie, and right now he's working in the kitchens. He's kind of living a job that he would actually making food, making bread. We even see his future in the series. He's going to actually take a job doing this. And so for Hot Pie, he almost feels like he's in his comfort zone. He wishes that he just wasn't in Harrenhal. That's the whole thing with both characters, maybe Hot Pie and Gendry. It's they like the positions they're put in, right? They've been put into positions that they're actually good at, but it's in Harrenhal, and Harrenhal has this ghostly feel around it. It's something that George has built up through really the last couple of chapters, and it's kind of boiling over here as we have Arya being this kind of ghost of Harrenhal type character. But the other part of this is Pia's story, where we don't really see a lot of payoff to this character until much later in the series with the Feast for Crows, as Jaime's going to come back to Harrenhal. It's where a lot of like the Harrenhal arcs kind of conclude, and so I think that's interesting. And you think about even how Arya looks at the character of Arya as being this character that, oh yeah, she's sleeping with a bunch of Lannister men, and almost looks down on that. And I can understand why she feels that way, but you also have to remember, when you're in Harrenhal and you're in a situation where there's brutal people around you, the brave companions, Amory Lorch, this is not a group of men that you can just deny. Like, you have to do what you have to do to survive, and Arya, of all people, should know that. And so I did find that to be a little interesting, that the way she looks at a character like Paya, I'm going to go with that pronunciation from now on. Might be wrong. You guys are always quick to remind me when I make pronunciation mistakes, so feel free to do that in the comments. Arya asks Hot Pie for a tart from the tray he baked, but Hot Pie refuses, saying he needs the whole tray because Sir Amory is partial to them, but Arya suggests spitting on the tarts since she hates Sir Amory. You see the differences between Arya and Hot Pie. Hot Pie is really trying to just do his job and not get any issues come of that. He's very much cool with just staying in Harrenhal and just doing his job. You see that Arya, because she is a Stark, because of the resentment that she has towards the Lannisters, she's willing to do other things outside of just doing her duty. And really what you can see a lot of with Arya is she does not really do her duty at all. In terms of what she's supposed to be as a servant, she very much rebels against that. She's willing to spit in their food because she's a lot more brave. She, for one, has Jaqen's backing, so even if she did get into trouble, she could just whisper a name to Jaqen and have that person killed. But also, Arya is just braver than a character like Hot Pie. Also, I will note this. I don't know if you're going to hear throughout some parts of this video, I did just get a cat, and she is a little talkative this morning. So if you do hear that, I'm going to try to cut it out in editing. I should be able to. But if you do hear it at times, she's just saying hello. I just wanted to throw that out there if anybody's hearing that. Hot Pie fears the punishment, saying Sir Amory would know and he would be whipped. Arya insists no one can taste spit. And that's the case, right? I understand Hot Pie because you're very anxious of any opportunity of you losing your position, right? Hot Pie likes the job he's in, but then also you're getting punished for it. And Arya, it's so interesting because Arya is so willing to do this, but Arya would never be the person that gets punished for this. Here is Rhea, by the way. She was being very talkative. She doesn't like to be held, but I thought I would show her to you guys since she's being very talkative. And I think for Arya, what's so interesting is she's so willing to spit on their food, all that stuff, but she doesn't think about how that could affect Hot Pie. What if somebody was seeing them doing this? What if somebody was awake? And even if Hot Pie was caught, like, spitting in it, maybe they somehow tasted it or they found out, it wouldn't be Arya that's whipped. It would be Hot Pie, because he was the person in charge of making all these tarts and things like that. So again, it just kind of comes down to Hot Pie is looking at the repercussions of things that could happen, and Arya just doesn't really have all that much of a regard because she's a bit more pragmatic, because Arya's a bit more brave and she's willing to take risks at times. Hot Pie then warns Arya she shouldn't be there at night, but Arya notes the kitchens are never still at night, with work always being done. Hot Pie worries Pink Eye, also known as Mebble, who is his actual name. Pink Eye, Mebble, the overseer for Arya, might notice that she is missing. But Arya replies Pink Eye never wakes once passed out, describing his daily drunken routine. And it's really great to just build off of how Arya has become as a character. Because of her taking out in the last chapter, she's gotten a lot more confident, because the person overlooking her is not nearly as cruel or being able to oversee her as well. Arya is able to get away with a lot more now. So she's willing to travel at Harrenhal at night. She's willing to slack on her duties, whereas before with Wease, that was never the case. She had to obey all those things, and that's even why Arya was sent to Wease, because when she came to Harrenhal, the women that were sorting all the people already knew she could be a problem, and so they sent her to Wease. But when Wease dies, that opens the door for a character like Arya to kind of just explore a bit, and you really see that in this castle, where she feels like she has more freedom, and you also have the mixture of this. In the last chapter, we still saw the Lannisters' army as being there. Tywin leaves in the last chapter. But here with Arya, there's not nearly as many people. And think about Harrenhal. It's this huge castle. You think about even House of the Dragon. Harrenhal is done really good on House of the Dragon in terms of what I think it would look like, the overall feeling of the castle. But even take it to an extent of the show didn't necessarily get the scale of Harrenhal. Harrenhal is so humongous. When this garrison's only like 100 men, is what Arya tells us in this chapter, there's not nearly enough men to cover everywhere in Harrenhal. It's quite easy for Arya to just traverse, because it's not like you also have 100 men on guard duty. There are going to be guys on shifts, so you might see maybe half of those men are actually on guard, or maybe a quarter of those men are on guard. So you think about that. Okay, there's 50 to 25 men guarding all of like Harrenhal at a time, maybe. So Arya just has so much more freedom since the chapter ended in Arya 8 to Arya 9. As you get into page 508, Arya waits until Pink Eye snores before creeping barefoot up the servant's stair, carrying no light, remembering Sirio's lessons that darkness can be her friend. Arya is also learning from Jaqen. Remember, Jaqen, he was able to hear her the last time he gave for one of the names, was that Jaqen told her that he could hear her. And so now she's taking that and she's going, okay, let's get rid of the footwear. If I'm going barefoot, it's going to be much harder to hear me. And I'm also not going to carry a light, so it's very difficult to see me. She tells Hot Pie they could escape without Pink Eye noticing, but Hot Pie refuses, saying it's better in Harrenhal than the woods, where he had to eat worms and return to his baking. And this is so great, because when we think about where these characters are going to go in A Storm of Swords, Hot Pie is once again going to be on the run in the woods, and he's going to be thinking about this. And this is the big point right now for people in Harrenhal like Gendry and Hot Pie that differs from Arya. Right now, they're being treated reasonably well. They're in professions that suit their needs. Like, for instance, if Hot Pie had his way, he would love to probably be somebody that is a cook. As a baker, as what his role is in Harrenhal, he likes that. I think he just wishes, if you're Hot Pie, you probably just wish there wasn't as horrible as people above you, and that you were in a different castle. But outside of that, Hot Pie is feeling pretty okay about where he is right now. The same is going to apply to Gendry, right? Gendry is being an armorer right now, a blacksmith, and he's being treated reasonably well. Arya right now is willing to try and escape because she knows the people right now that live in Harrenhal. She hates them, and she wants to get home. People like Hot Pie and Gendry don't necessarily have a home, so they're not as quick to want to leave. They don't have a family, really. So they're not as quick to leave as someone like, say, Arya is. Arya hears 2 blasts of a war horn and the sound of portcullis chains. She urges Hot Pie to listen, explaining someone is going out or coming in. Hot Pie complains about making bread and says he doesn't like the dark. Arya decides to go see for herself, asking for a tart. Hot Pie refuses, but Arya flinches one away, eating it on her way out. Arya is just feeling quite bold. She feels renewed as a character. She's no longer a mouse in Harrenhal. She's the ghost of Harrenhal. She's becoming more of herself. She's growing in her confidence. But another thing to think about here is just how a character like Hot Pie doesn't like the dark. He doesn't like the ghosts of Harrenhal. Arya has become that. She's one with the ghosts. And it's going to be interesting as she goes to then explore who is coming into the castle. Feeling bold, she sings quietly to herself, calling herself the ghost in Harrenhal. The horn rouses the castle, and people come into the ward to see the disturbance. Arya joins the crowd and sees ox carts rumbling under the portcullis. She recognizes it as a plunder guarded by riders speaking foreign tongues, some riding striped horses, realizing they are the bloody mummers. Arya withdraws deeper into the shadows as she sees a caged black bear in one wagon. Other carts are filled with loot, silver plate, weapons, shields, flour, and livestock. As prisoners appear at the rear, the first is a proud man in a torn red surcoat wearing mail bearing the device of a silver fist, not a lion. His wrists are bound and his ankle is tied by rope to the man behind, forcing the whole line to shuffle forward in lockstep. So remember, the Bloody Mummers have now served as the foragers for Harrenhal, taking up that idea. And so they're bringing in a lot of supplies back to Harrenhal. This isn't out of the ordinary, even though that we know the Bloody Mummers are going to switch sides by the end of this chapter. None of this is out of the ordinary, right? Outside of taking a large group of northern soldiers and lords captive. That is the suspicious part, because for the most part, what the Bloody Mummers have done is they've preyed upon the weak. They've taken from those that can't defend themselves, brought that back to Harrenhal to feed all of them. But here it's different. And you think about how large of a force the Bloody Mummers bring back with them of northern forces. And they're going to explain to Lorshire in the next page, in page 509, that they more or less, they were able to defeat Roose Bolton's vanguard. And this is something that if you're Amory Lorch, you should be questioning quite a lot. Like, Roose Bolton has far more men, much more disciplined and skilled men than the Bloody Mummers do. So how did the Bloody Mummers able to win a battle and then also, I won't even say a battle, a skirmish, I guess, and then take a bunch of people prisoner? That is really suspicious in a lot of ways. But we also see something like the caged black bear, which I really wonder, like, how did they even capture this bear? That's just another thing that I think about, but it's not all that important as of right now. Arya is also, understanding how to use the shadows to hide her, where she can watch what's going on, but not be seen. As we get into page 509, many of the captives are wounded. If any halt, riders whip them forward. Arya tries to count the prisoners, but loses track before 50. There are at least twice that many. There's around 100 men here, rivaling how many men are actually garrisoning Harrenhal. And when you think about how many northern men there are, you think about how many Bloody Mummers there are, and you think about what's going to happen later on in the chapter with the idea of them all being drunk and not prepared for a fight, Harrenhal will go down pretty quickly. Their clothes are muddy and bloody, and Arya recognizes northern sigils among them: Twin Towers in the fray, the Sunburst Karstark sigil, the Bloody Man, the Bolton, and the Battle Axe, the Kerwin. Arya realizes they are her father's and Robb's men, and feels uneasy, because Arya's realizing these men have been taken prisoner, and if she could help them, that could change everything. She might be able to reveal herself and finally go home. The Bloody Mummers dismount as stable boys come to tend their lathered horses. One rider shouts for ale, causing Sir Amory Lorch to appear above the ward with 2 torchbearers. Vargo Hoat reins up below and greets him with his thick, slobbery speech. Sir Amory demands to know what's happening, and Vargo Hoat explains what Roose Bolton tried to cross the river, but the brave companions cut his vanguard to pieces, killed many, and routed Bolton. He identifies the captured lords as Galbert Glover and Sir Aenys Frey behind him. But this is what's so curious, because you could say that, okay, crossing a river, if you have the right defensible position and you know how to defend it, you can defeat a host much larger than your own. But are we really, like, this is the part that really gets me about Amory Lorch, why he's not all that intelligent, is if you're sitting here and you're listening to this story, remember, Roose Bolton has the vast majority of Robb's army. Like, he has all of the foot. Right now, what Robb has in the West is just his mounted horse. He doesn't have foot. He's trying to do very quick campaigns, not be bogged down, any of that. That's what makes a lot of his war effort really awesome in kind of book one and also in the West, is because he doesn't have his whole army. Roose Bolton is right now in control of the majority of his forces. We're going to see something like Duskendale happen, which is going to lose Robb a lot of his forces, along with how he treats Lord Karstark, along with how he deals with Lord Karstark. So, hearing that somehow the brave companions, who aren't all that skilled to begin with, somehow beat Roose Bolton seems a little suspect. Sir Amory Lorch, who hates Vargo Hoat, does not look pleased. He orders Sir Cadwyn to take the prisoners to the dungeons. As Grover tries to protest, saying they were promised honorable treatment, Vargo Hoat spits and screams and tells him to be silent, spraying spittle. Sir Amory tells the captives that Hoat's promises mean nothing. As Castellan of Harrenhal, he decides their fate. And that's another aspect of this. A lot of reasons as to why Hoat is going to switch sides, and as well as the Bloody Mummers, all that, is mainly due to, one, the Lannister war effort is going really badly at this point. Tywin has just lost another battle to the Riverlands and the North, with losing to Edmure on the Red Fork. Now you have Robb, who's already winning all these battles in the West. You have Stannis, who's marching on King's Landing. The Lannister cause, as of right now, is at its weakest that it's ever been. And they are looking like they're going to lose. So Vargo Hoat, on one sense, is going to go, this is a great time to switch sides. But then he's also going to go, I hate Amory Lorch. He's somebody that talks down to me, and I can get rid of him and then take Harrenhal once Roose Bolton leaves, and then be in control of Harrenhal once Roose Bolton leaves. As of right now, the odds are favoring Vargo Hoat. Amory Lorch then orders them herded into the great cell under the Widow's Tower, saying any who refuse can die where they stand. Guards drive the captives away at spear point as Arya sees Pink Eye emerge, blinking at the torchlight. She fears he might notice her absence, but recalls he never actually follows through on his threats of whipping. He's one of those people that's all talk, but no real action. He's trying to intimidate you, but doesn't act on it. And so Arya at this point is going to try and get out of the way so Pink Eye doesn't see her. She doesn't want to unnecessarily test that, and will try to get out of the way. To avoid being spotted, she glances around and sees the oxen unharnessed, carts unloaded, the brave companions clamoring for drink, and people gathering around the caged bear. As we get into page 510. In the commotion, Arya slips away unseen, wanting to avoid being put to work. That's another aspect of it. One, you don't want to be upsetting Pink Eye unnecessarily. And on the other side of that, you also don't want to have to be put to work, do meaningless chores or whatnot. Away from the gates, Harrenhal is mostly deserted, the noises fading behind her, as there's not a lot of people around the castle. That's the whole big part of this, is that if there's a bunch of attention drawn to the gate, well, there's not going to be many people around in just the random places of Harrenhal. A swirling wind gusts drawing a high scream from the cracks in the Wailing Tower, as leaves skitter around the stones in the courtyards, carried by the wind. Harrenhal feels strange, sometimes swallowing sound into silence, sometimes echoing like ghosts. It builds up that really strange feeling of Harrenhal that we really see at House of the Dragon with when Daemon first gets to Harrenhal and he's like going through as he's first went to take it, more or less. That's the feeling that a lot of people have in Harrenhal, where the sounds don't travel naturally. It seems to be haunted. Arya moves quietly through the Middle Bailey around Tower of Dread and through the empty mews, rumored to be haunted by falcons' spirits. With only about 100 men left to guard the castle, most of Harrenhal is closed off or empty. And you really feel this because if you're thinking about where Sir Amory is living at right now, he's living in the Castellan's chambers in Kingspire. Arya and everybody else is left to kind of sleep below him. Where remember when the Lannisters were here and Tywin was occupying Harrenhal, that all the towers were occupied, really. There were people everywhere. It was crowded, it seemed like. Now, it seems deserted. So you're trying to pull all of the servants in closer together so that they don't get lost or go wandering what Arya is doing. Passing the armory, Arya hears a hammer and sees orange light. She climbs to the roof, peeks inside, and sees Gendry forging a breastplate. Arya watches him work, noting his strength and the way he focuses only on the metal. Arya, realizing Gendry is just a great armorsmith, is what he's been trained to do pretty much his entire life. She slips through the window, leaps down beside him, and Gendry tells her she should be in bed and asks about the noise. Arya explains that Vargo Hoat has returned with prisoners, including Glover from Deepwood Motte and other Northmen. Realizing why she came, Arya tells Gendry he must help her free them. Arya wants so badly to free these men, to reveal who she is, to be able to go home, and that's what she's asking Gendry for. But here's the problem. As we get into page 511, Gendry likes the position he's in right now. It might not be perfect, but he's getting to eat, he's doing what he likes to do. It's not such a bad life, as Gendry laughs at Arya's idea and asks how they would even do it. Arya suggests using his hammer to smash open the dungeon door. Gendry points out the guards would watch and mock them while he tried. Arya says they need to kill the guards, which is just something that's crazy. Arya is not going to be able to kill someone. She doesn't even have a sword, and Gendry himself couldn't kill all of them. He's not nearly as skilled enough for that, for trained Lannister men. Gendry asks how they could do that, but Arya insists maybe there wouldn't be that many, and that's a whole big what if. Gendry says even 2 guards are too many for just the 2 of them, and warns Vargo Hoat would mutilate them. There would be consequences to this. Arya accuses him of being afraid as he tells her to leave him alone. She insists there are 100 Northmen prisoners, as many men as Sir Amory has, not counting the bloody mummers. Arya knows that if they can free these men, that they can win. They can take Harrenhal. They can take out the Lannister soldiers, all of that. But here's the issue. You got to think about all this. If it wasn't for the bloody mummers, even if, say, Arya was able to free these prisoners, for one, you're leaving out the idea that the bloody mummers are still a thing, so you'd have less men, and the Northmen don't appear to be in the best shape, even though they are fine. So that's the issue you run into. She argues they could free the prisoners, take the castle, and escape. But Gendry retorts she couldn't save Lamy and asks where they would go even if they could escape. Arya answers Winterfell, promising to tell her mother he helped her so he could stay. And here's the whole big issue. For one, it's a lot of what ifs. It's a lot of calculations that don't seem to go in Arya's favor, right? For one, they have to somehow free the guards, which doesn't seem to be the most likely thing in the world. Then they somehow have to get all the way to Winterfell. Now, could they tell the Stark men? Could that go well? Sure, but also knowing that this is Lord Bolton that's about to be in charge, couldn't also not go very well either. And even the biggest part here is, as Gendry remarks to this, Gendry feels like, what's the point? You know, he's just going to be another servant. Is when he gets to Winterfell, is he just going to start shoeing her horses? What is he going to do? Here, at least, he's doing what he likes to do in smithing, but he's also treated fine. Why should Gendry take such a huge risk that could completely ruin his life or get him killed when he already has a decent life? And that's what Arya is not understanding. Arya is thinking that Gendry is he's being afraid. That isn't the case. Yes, part of it is Gendry doesn't want to lose his feet, but other part of that is Gendry has no motivation to do what Gendry wants him to do. We're only going to see him agree with Arya when the situation gets much worse. Arya gets angry and tells him to stop, as Gendry asks why he should risk losing his feet just to work at Winterfell, saying smithing is the same no matter the master, and that's the whole point of it. He mentions Ben Blackthumb, a smith who has served at Harrenhal for generations, and says he agrees that a sword's a sword, a helm's a helm. A smith will always be needed no matter where you go, the point of it, so why should Gendry take such a big risk? Gendry decides he'll stay at Harrenhal under Lucan, who he says is a fair master. Arya warns the queen will catch him, unlike Ben Blackthumb, but Gendry insists the gold cloaks weren't even after him specifically, which is not true, which is not really necessarily true, and Gendry is a high value target if you know who he is, right, being Robert's bastard, but at this point, they're far enough away from the gold cloaks that the gold cloaks don't matter. Like, Cersei has much bigger issues, like, that's not really something that he should be worried about. Arya argues they were, saying he's somebody. Gendry replies he's just an apprentice smith who hopes to become a master armorer unless he runs away and gets killed or maimed. He turns away from Arya, picks up his hammer, and resumes his work, ending the conversation. As we get into page 512, Arya clenches her fists in frustration and insults Gendry by telling him to put mule's ears on his next helm and flees before she hits him. She thinks Gendry will regret not helping when his identity is discovered and he is killed, which, again, it's Arya, I think, taking out a lot of her frustration. It's her being a child, that people don't want to help her and do everything that she wants to do because she knows the Lannisters are not great. She has a bias against them, all that kind of stuff. People are not willing to take unnecessary risks when their living condition is not going to change all that much differently than, say, Arya's would. Remembering the village makes Arya think of the march, the storeroom, and the tickler. She recalls the boys struck by the mace, all for Joffrey and Lamy Greenhands, reflecting that she had been helpless then. Arya doesn't want to feel that again, of feeling helpless, of having to resort to just basically lying dead and just being a servant for the people that have harmed her and those that she cared about around her. Arya considers that Jaqen made her brave again, turning her into a ghost instead of a mouse. Arya had gained all of her confidence because of Jaqen, but now she had been avoiding him. Because at this point, she is starting to question Jaqen and how magical he is. Because, yes, in the first death with Chiswick, it had been kind of an easier kill, just pushing him off of the wall. But with Weese's death, it was different. It seemed like dark magic. Why would his dog turn on him when that never seemed to be possible? How was that a thing? Arya then remembers Yoren, who had found Jaqen in a black cell with Rorge and Biter, and suspects Jaqen may be a wizard and the others demons. So, a little bit of a stretch there, but I think the point of it, which is interesting, is when we look at theories of what is Jaqen's purpose, what was his mission, all that kind of stuff, we look back to the point where, remember, Jaqen was in the black cells. But why? And I think about that question. Is Jaqen wanted to be in the black cells for one reason or another? And many have speculated, this isn't going to be one of those videos where we break down all the theories, but it should tell you that Yoren knew this guy was pretty bad. Regardless of what Jaqen had told as being his crime was, he knew it was enough to where he's not allowed to be with the rest of the men, and Arya thinks about that. She thinks about Jaqen still owing her one death, and that in old Nan's stories, the last wish was the most important. Arya reflects that Chiswick and Weeze weren't important, so the final death must matter. Yet she also fears that using it will make her powerless again, and that's the point. Arya right now has life and death in her fingertips. If someone gives her the wrong look, if someone threatens her, she can have that person killed. But once that's gone, Arya's quote-unquote shield is gone. She doesn't have that protection anymore, and she may feel like she'll revert to being helpless again. So that's the point here, is that Arya's avoiding him because she wants to make sure this last name means something. With Pink Eye away, Arya avoids going back to her bed and heads to the Godswood. She enjoys the smell of the trees, the feel of the earth, and the sounds of the wind and leaves. At the stream under a deadfall, Arya retrieves her hidden broomstick sword. Since Gendry refused to make her one, she made it herself by breaking bristles off a broom. The weapon is light and crude, but Arya likes its jagged, splintered end. At this point, Arya doesn't really have a lot of power. She's using a broomstick sword. So she's trying to train herself. She's trying to feel like she has some sort of power. But at this point, it just shows where Arya's been beaten down to into this book. As we get into page 513. Arya spends her free hours practicing Sirio's drills barefoot in the Godswood, striking branches and regaining her balance. At night, she climbs trees and imagines branches and leaves as her enemies, cutting them down in play battles. Arya's training, trying to prepare herself for the next time that she has to, defend herself or to attack. Resting on a high branch, she listens to bats and sees the heart tree, which reminds her of Winterfell. A lot of the shots that we see in Harrenhal in House of the Dragon with the weirwood, the heart tree, what I'm picturing in my mind here, Arya feels almost the safest and most comfortable there because it's an attachment to Winterfell. It's her connection to the old gods. And in a lot of ways, you think about the Weirwoods, maybe it's looking over her, and it's looking over her as a character in Harrenhal and protecting her. Arya climbs down and approaches the Harrenhal Weirwood, observing its twisted, hateful face. She kneels and prays to the old gods, asking them to help her free the northern prisoners and kill Sir Amory, return her to Winterfell, and make her fearless. Remembering how the gods did not save her father, Arya angrily scolds the tree, doubting its power. And that's the whole point of it is, even, let's say you're religious, and it's a struggle when you come into hardship. So, for instance, I saw this very much in my own life when my grandfather passed away. A lot of my family are very religious. I would say I'm religious as well. I wouldn't say I'm very religious, go to church every week or anything, but you see in those moments of hardship and loss, those beliefs are tested. Why would, for instance, if there is a God, why would God take my grandfather when he was much healthier? He was the one everyone always believed was going to live longer than my grandmother because my grandmother was very dependent on my grandfather. There was a lot of belief system that was checked there. And the same is here with Arya, where if the old gods are a thing, why didn't they protect Ned? And that's a lot of how the belief system here is working. And Arya is kind of like, why should I pray to them if they didn't help me when they actually needed it? But a voice answers that gods are not mocked, girl. As startled, Arya leaps up and draws her wooden sword. Jaqen H'ghar emerges from the shadows, saying he has come for the third name since 1 and 2, and then comes 3. And it's interesting because Arya prays to the gods to basically be fearless, to help the Northmen, to go back to Winterfell. And here the gods seem to send Jaqen, as Jaqen comes to get the third name, which will forward the last part of this chapter and really the whole plot moving forward. As we get into page 514, Arya lowers her wooden sword and asks Jaqen how he knew she was there. Jaqen replies, a man sees, a man hears, and a man knows. Just knowing that Jaqen is a step ahead of Arya. Where Arya is good at street smart, she's being able to wander around Harrenhal, but it seems Jaqen has taken an interest in her and is even better at hiding from her. Arya suspiciously questions him about killing Weiss, summoning Rorge and Biter, and his true name. Jaqen says some men have many names, including Weasel, Ari, and Arya. It's interesting because Jaqen has uncovered her true identity, and Arya questions this a lot, because only one person really knows her identity in Gendry. So how did he figure this out? Arya presses against the heart tree, asking if Gendry told, but Jaqen answers, a man knows, my lady of Stark. It also should tell you that Jaqen is taking a special interest in Arya, and for what reason. And we all know that's because he wants to recruit Arya, but that's all very interesting. Arya asks for his help freeing Glover and the other Northmen, insisting they must kill guards and open the cell. But that's not how Jaqen works. Jaqen is offering her one last name, and not to kill all these different people, just one. Jaqen reminds her she has already named 2 and owes 3 lives only. Arya insists one guard is not enough, wanting him to save them as she saved him. Jaqen tells her 3 lives were stolen from a god and must be repaid. Arya asks if she can name anyone, and Jaqen says yes. And this is where Arya is going to pull her little trick on Jaqen. But here's what we do know. Okay, you saved 3 people. Myself, Rorge, and Biter. I'm not going to go on a killing spree for you. That's not how his faith works. And we're going to see that a lot more with A Feast for Crows. But it's one of these things that Arya is never going to truly accept, is the idea that you need to kill only a set amount of people, and you don't get to choose who you kill. It's who is requested. Arya is never going to understand that. Arya does her killing because it's very personal to her. Arya makes Jaqen swear, and Jaqen swears by the old gods, the 7, and all gods of sea, air, and fire. Arya asks if even a king could be killed, but Jaqen says yes, though not instantly. Death will come in time. Jaqen can't teleport, and he's also got to plan and stake out how he's going to do the kill. So that's all really important for Jaqen, but either way, someone will die once named, and that's the important part that Arya needs to know. He kneels beside her, urging her to whisper the name if afraid, and Arya whispers in his ear, It's Jaqen Hagar. Jaqen, more distraught than ever, says, "A girl, she makes a jest." This is really serious if you're someone like Jaqen, because he knows that's a death sentence. He is so much put into his own faith that if this is the case, he will have to kill himself. There is no stepping down from this. That tells you how much of a cult the Faceless Men are. He's willing to just kill himself straight out because that's who Arya names as we get into page 515. Arya tells Jaqen he swore and the gods heard. Jaqen agrees the gods heard, produces a thin knife, and warns she will lose her only friend. But that's the case. Jaqen is not Arya's friend. It's a weird relationship because Jaqen is in a lot of ways scouting Arya as a potential Faceless Man, but if they were truly friends, Arya would not be having these names. Jaqen and Arya would be a lot more, they'd be very different. That's not what friends are. And Arya points this out right away. She insists that he is not her friend, since a friend would help her. Jaqen smiles briefly, suggesting she might name another name if a friend did help. And this is interesting because I'll point out two things here. So one, I also do want to counter here that a friend not helping Arya does not make them not a friend. We know that Gendry and Hot Pie are friends of Arya's, but they both deny her. So it's a little bit of Arya feeling a bit salty because people won't help her, and she's using that against Jaqen. And Jaqen's also seeing what Arya is offering, saying that Jaqen has to help Arya, and then she'll unname him. Arya agrees she might, and Jaqen makes the knife vanish and tells her to come. Arya is surprised he will act so quickly, but Jaqen insists a man cannot rest until a certain name is unsaid and commands her to follow, because this is going to be the forefront of Jaqen's mind. If Jaqen doesn't do this, he has to kill himself. So of course he's going to be very quick to get rid of Arya naming him as a name. Arya hides her broomstick sword and follows him from the God's Wood. Harrenhal is restless with activity after Vargo Hoat's arrival. Carts and animals gone, but the bear cage still suspended on chains in the yard. Stable boys throw stones at the bear. Voices and clattering come from the barracks hall where men feast and sing. I want to paint the picture here a little bit before we really dive into the Weasel Soup section of the story. This is very much a prelude to the Red Wedding. Think about the tactics going on here. You have deceit, you have a betrayal, and you have Vargo Hoat's men getting Amory Lorch's men very drunk, sleepy, not in a capacity to fight back. Very similar. And you think about who is orchestrating this whole thing, Roose Bolton. It's a lot of that on-the-nose foreshadowing to things to come later. Arya realizes Pink Eye will know she is missing, but he is likely busy serving wine to the brave companions and Amory's men. Jaqen warns the hungry gods will feast on blood and urges her to unsay one name and abandon the plan, but Arya refuses. Arya needs this done, even if it will cost many lives. Jaqen resigns himself, saying the thing will be done, but she must obey without further talk. Arya agrees to obey and asks what she should do. Jaqen instructs her to go to the kitchens and tell Hot Pie that 100 men are hungry and must be fed hot broth. And this is a very weird request. If you're thinking about anything, Arya is trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to kill these guards? And I'm going to get hot broth? Very weird. As we get into page 516. Jaqen tells Arya she must wait in the kitchens while broth is prepared. Arya runs to the kitchen and finds Hot Pie pulling loaves from the oven. The cooks have been woken to feed Vargo Hoat and the bloody mummers. Servants are preparing food, bread, tarts, ham, rabbits with honey, onions, and carrots. Arya then announces that broth also must be made as the cook points at the kettles, complains about being disturbed, and tells her to wait. It's not something that's uncalled for, right? They're already asking for all this different stuff, and now Arya just brings one more thing. It's not anything out of the ordinary. The cook orders Arya to fetch butter and cheese from the buttery, and Arya runs and finds Pia with a mummer in the loft. Pie addresses, gathers butter and cheese, and asks Arya to help carry them. Arya refuses and warns her to hurry, or Vargo will cut off her foot. She runs back. A lot of things going on here. Arya is very desperate to make sure she's in position for the plan, and also she's threatening Paya, which is kind of crazy. I mean, this isn't necessarily the threat that's actually going on, but trying to get Paya to actually get to work so that this plan can go well. On her way, Arya wonders why the captives haven't had hands or feet cut off. Perhaps Vargo fears Robin. This is a big point of it. Vargo is known for mutilating people, being very cruel, But yet none of these northern men seem to be in that bad of a condition. Why is that? And that's something Arya's thinking about, but she's not putting all the pieces together. Back in the kitchen, Arya helps Hot Pie stir the broth as she considers telling him the plan, but decides not to. Rorge's voice interrupts as he enters with Jaqen and Biter demanding broth. The cook says it isn't ready yet, but Rorge threatens him violently, insisting on having it immediately. They don't care if the broth tastes good, they just want the broth to be hot, enough to where it can burn and seriously injure people that they're going to use it on these guards in the prison, more or less. As we get into page 517, Biter grabs half-charred rabbit from the spit, tearing it with his teeth while honey drips down his hands to threaten the cook. The cook, beaten, allows them to take the broth, but tells them to explain to Vargo why it's thin. Jaqen dons padded mitts, gives Arya another pair, and they haul kettles of boiling broth together. Rorge carries one kettle, Biter carries two despite burning his hands, and so they make for the Widow's Tower. At the Widow's Tower door, two guards stop them as Arya insists the broth is for the prisoners and they're waved through. It's interesting because Arya takes charge. She's grown so confident, especially with Jaqen next to her, that she's willing to speak out against even guards when she's just a servant, more or less. And that gets them permission to go to where the Northmen are being held. Inside, they descend to the dungeons, a long, dank stone vault with torches and Sir Amory guards at a table. 8 guards total, separated by iron bars from the Northmen captives. But this is what's so interesting. Think about what Arya tried to propose to Gendry earlier, that they could definitely break out these men. There were 10 guards in total, 2 on the door, 8 in the actual prison. You would not have been able to break them free. Let's just put that out there. Arya's plan right away would have failed without Jaqen. Guards mock Arya and ask what's in the kettle, as Rorge replies crudely. The smell of broth draws all the guards to the table, distracted by hunger and talk of bread and spoons. This is where everything goes wrong for the Lannister guards. Rorge suddenly flings scalding broth across the table, splashing their faces. Jaqen does the same, and Biter hurls his kettle's underarm, one striking the captain in the head and dropping him instantly. Now, I want to point this out. If you've ever been severely burned, you know how bad it feels, especially initially. For my back, had a surgery more or less where they try and make your nerves stop sending pain signals. And how they do that is they use heat to an extent. And so during my operation, I actually got, I believe it was 2nd degree burns. I can't remember what degree of burns, but it's where I have a marking still on my leg. And during the operation, I told them, this is burning my leg, it's hurting my leg. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to do that or whatnot. It was my first interaction with real heat problem. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had in terms of pain. So now amplify that from just being on my leg. I had it on a small portion of my leg under my knee. Now equivalent that to you're getting it full in the face and it's boiling hot broth, so it's liquid. It's a great plan. And it works to perfection. The rest of the guards scream in agony, blinded or burned, some praying, some trying to crawl away. As we get into page 518, Arya presses back against the wall as Rorge begins slitting throats. Biter cracks necks with his bare hands, killing guards quickly. One guard manages to draw a blade, but Jaqen duels him, driving him into a corner and kills him with a thrust to the heart. Jaqen then wipes the bloody blade on Arya's shift, telling her she should be bloody too, since this is her work. And I like this well, because one thing we're going to talk about with Arya is revenge, and how she wants all these people to be dead. And it's a stain on Arya of the person that she's becoming, and how she's killing people. All these people are going to die because of her. Now we understand why, and we get why Arya's doing this, and many of these men have done probably horrible things, so you understand why Arya's doing it, but this is the path Arya is being sent on. And this is almost like a nice little nod from George that she's being sent on this bloody mission of death and destruction. The cell key hangs on a wall hook and Rorge takes it and opens the door. The first freed captive wearing a mailed fist surcoat and introduces himself as Robert Glover. Jaqen bows to him respectfully, and freed men strip the dead guards of their weapons and rush upstairs, eager for revenge. Robert Glover praises the broth trick, asking if it was Vargo Hoat's idea. And this is where the first little hint should be here if you are somebody like Arya. Why is Robert Glover thinking they're Vargo Hoat's men? Vargo Hoat's men just beat them in a battle, took them prisoner. Why would he think it was them? So if you're Arya, you gotta be thinking, wait a minute, did I just stumble into a whole nother plot that was going on that would have happened even without me? That's the crazy part of this chapter, is that even though this is a great plan by Arya, and you see exactly why she wants to do it, this was already going to happen anyway. Arya, putting all this importance on her third name, you could argue her third name was actually the least impactful of all of them. Because this was already going to happen anyway. If she had not named anyone, this still was going to happen, just albeit a bit differently. Rarge then starts laughing uncontrollably about this being the notion of Vargo Hoats as snot flying from his missing nose, gnaws a dead guard's fingers, cracking bones in his teeth. Really disgusting thing to see. Glover starts to get a little suspicious. Are these actually people of the Brave Companions? And Rarge answers that they are now. Jaqen formally introduces himself as once of Lorath and names his companions as Rarge and Biter. Jaqen gestures to Arya to be introduced, but before Jaqen can say anything, Arya quickly bursts out, "I'm Weasel," hiding her true identity. Arya is still not willing to tell other people she's Arya and wants to cover that up until she's sure that these men are loyal to her and that they can get her back north. She's not willing to just trust people. She's lost a lot of that trust that she once had. Glover dismisses her as unimportant and orders that they finish the bloody business. As we get into page 519, Arya and Jaqen climb back up the stair and find the door guards already slain. Northmen run across the ward, shouts rising. As barracks hall doors burst open, a wounded man staggers out screaming before they cut him down. Fighting breaks out around the gatehouse as Rarge and Biter rush off with Robert Glover, with Jaqen kneeling beside Arya. But what's so awesome here is that we get another inclination that this was a bad usage of her name, because Jaqen tells her that she doesn't understand what's actually going on here. And Arya tries to say she does. She knows exactly what happened. She freed the Northmen. They're taking over the castle. But Jaqen tells her that a wolf banner will soon be raised, but first she must unsay a name. And Jaqen is more or less hinting at the idea that this was already being set in motion. The reason that Jaqen is able to go along with this so well and get people like Biter and Rorge to go along with him is because he knows this is going to happen anyway. The Bloody Mummers, the Brave Companions, were going to flip on Amory Lorch anyway. Arya then begrudgingly takes back Jaqen's name and asks if she still has a third death. Jaqen shows her the slain guard, saying the debt is paid through the extra deaths. Arya reluctantly agrees, feeling sad. She's just a mouse again. Her shield is gone. She's used her trick, and now she's on her own once again. Jaqen says a god has his due, and now a man must die. He passes his hand over his face, changing his features entirely. New nose, scar, black curls, as Arya is shocked and asks who he is and how he did it. He says it's no harder than taking a new name if one knows the way. Again, he's really just showing Arya what she could be one day and intriguing her to become like an acolyte, more or less. Arya asks him to show her. He tells her she must come with him across the sea. But Arya is not willing to do this right now. Arya has too much personal investment in Westeros. Her family is still mostly intact. The news has not reached her about Bran and Rickon when it's going to, basically a little bit later on. The idea that Catelyn and Robb are still alive. For the most part, Arya has no reason to go to Braavos at this moment. Jaqen accepts her rationale of not leaving and presses a coin into her palm. He tells her it is a coin of great value, though not for buying horses. If the day comes she wants to find him again, she must give the coin to any man of Braavos and say, Valar Morghulis, as we get into page 520. Arya repeats this and clutches the coin tightly. Jaqen tells her he is as dead as Arya and must leave, reminding her again of the phrase. But what's interesting is Jaqen says that he has things that he must do. He has a duty and he must honor certain obligations. The question is, what are those? Because a lot of people have speculated the reason that Jaqen was even in the Black Cells to begin with was the idea that he was going to be sent to kill Ned. That maybe Littlefinger hired him, and that's the reason he was placed there, because Ned would also be with Yoren, so that if Joffrey didn't kill Ned, well, then Ned would still die. And so that maybe worked for Jaqen because it allowed him to get out of the city relatively easily. He could then maybe go to Castle Black and look at their libraries, maybe looking for information on the dragons or maybe the others or death as a whole, and then maybe taking from there, going to Old Town, whatever, because right now we know he's going to Old Town. That is his next mission. He bows and walks off into the night, leaving Arya alone among the corpses. Arya comforts herself that the dead deserved it, recalling Sir Amory's killings. She's trying to justify all that's happened, when in reality, it's a pretty dark scene. Arya's helped basically start the killing of hundreds of people. She returns to her straw bed in King's Spire cellars, whispers her names, and softly adds, Valar Morghulis, wondering what it meant. By dawn, Pink Eye and the other servants returning, one missing, killed in the fighting. Pink Eye grumbles about his bones as he goes to see what has happened. He reports that Harrenhal has been taken, the bloody mummers killed Sir Amory's men, many in their sleep or wild drunk. What does this remind you of? It reminds you of the Red Wedding, of what's all going to happen there, the deception that goes on there, the killing of men while drunk or even asleep. A new northern lord will soon arrive, said to be a hard man from near the wall. Pink Eye warns them to keep working or face whippings, looking directly at Arya, but never asking where she had been. Pink Eye at this point probably knows that Arya was very important in the taking of Harrenhal for Roose Bolton. All morning, Arya watches the bloody mummers loot the corpses and drag them to Flowstone Yard for a pyre. Shagwell the Fool hacks off two knights' heads and parades around, making them talk, joking they died of hot weasel soup. And already, the rumor of Arya's involvement has begun to travel around Harrenhal. Arya is put to scrubbing bloodstains while others glance at her strangely, likely because Glover and the freedmen spoke of her part in the dungeon escape. Shagwell's weasel soup jape spreads, making Arya uneasy. Arya doesn't want this attention. She has survived Harrenhal through being in the shadows and being unknown to most people, and now it's the opposite. She's going to have to survive while people like Roose Bolton know of her, the brave companions know of her. She's going to be a well-known figure now. She considers adding him to her nightly list of names if he doesn't shut up. In terms of Shagwell, she might add Shagwell to her list. As we get into page 521, near evenfall, the new master of Harrenhal arrives, Roose Bolton, Lord of the Dreadfort. His appearance is plain, beardless, with pale eyes like ice. He wears black ringmail and a spotted pink cloak with a banner of a flayed man. Roose Bolton is not the image of someone Arya wants to reveal herself to. And you even think about the way that Roose is described, why so many people believe that he is maybe part of the others, maybe he's half other, half man, or maybe he's a vampire. It's because of his description. You think about the way his eyes are described as being made of almost ice. His squire, a boy Arya's age, commands Harrenhal to kneel and all obey. Vargo Hoat yields the castle to Bolton. Robert Glover and Sir Aenys Frey, freshly bathed and dressed, stand with Lord Bolton. Rorge and Biter remain at Harrenhal, speaking with Glover and Aenys. Shagwell the Fool drags Arya forward, loudly naming her the weasel who made the soup. Shagwell has unfortunately put Arya in a position where everyone now must address her, and especially Roose Bolton, the last person that Arya probably wanted to encounter. Arya wiggles free, but Bolton studies her with cold eyes. He asks her age, and she answers 10, which is great because she actually had to think about it. For a second, she couldn't even remember because it's been so long since any of that's actually mattered. He asks if she is fond of animals, but she cautiously says some kinds. He mentions lions and manticores must not be so, implying her defiance against the Lannister men. He rejects Weasel as her name and asks what her mother called her. And Arya, improvising, says Nymeria, shortened to Nan. A great name for Arya to have, given the name of her direwolf, given Arya as a character and the kind of reflections between the character of Nymeria and then also Arya. It's great, another name, as Arya adds another disguise to really her resume. Roose accepts this and tells her to call him my lord. He speaks of leeches as a secret of long life, noting his squire fears them. He decides Arya is suitable to serve and makes her his cupbearer while he remains at Harrenhal. Arya answers, yes, my lord. Well, she stumbles on it, but she gets to the point of accepting it. Now, for Arya, this is a whole new chapter for her. She's always lived in the shadows, really out of public eye of great lords and knights, but now she's going to have to play the role directly to Roose Bolton's face. As we get into page 522, Roose Bolton waved a hand and ordered Arya to be made presentable and taught how to pour wine properly. He instructed Vargo Hoat to replace the banners above the gatehouse, and the brave companions hauled down the Lion of Lannister and Sir Amory Lorch's Black Manticore. In their place they raised the flayed man of the Dreadfort and the dire wolf of Stark, just how Jaqen had foreshadowed. That evening, Arya, under the name Nan, poured wine for Roose Bolton and Vargo Hoat as they watched from the gallery. Below, the brave companions paraded Sir Amory Lorch naked through the middle ward. Sir Amory pleaded, sobbed, and clung to his captors until Rarge pulled him loose and Shagwell kicked him into the bear pit. Arya noticed the bear was black, like Yoren had been. She poured Roose Bolton's cup without spilling a drop. It shows that Arya, as we got to the end of the chapter, is a little bit more cold. When she's trying to get revenge, she's willing to see brutal, horrific ways that people die. I mean, Amory Lorch is a horrible person, don't get me wrong. He's this awful guy. But seeing him and the way that he dies, I can't help but cringe up a little bit. Being stripped naked, paraded around, and then you're going to be killed by a black bear. It's not a pretty way to die. It's not a clean, execution or any of that. Yeah, it's a dark way to end this chapter. That's what Arya's whole storyline has been about. It's a really dark, depressing storyline. And Arya is becoming more cruel. She's becoming more accepting of violence and the things that she's seen at only 10 years old. The killing of a lot of the garrison here. Amory Lorch, and we understand why she feels that way because of Yoren. And everything that Lorch did, how he uprooted Arya maybe getting back to Winterfell in the north safely. The Weasel soup stuff, where you're having hot boiling stuff thrown in people's faces. You see as this book goes on, Arya changes. And Arya becomes more and more vengeful. She becomes more hot-blooded and maybe even cruel to an extent. But thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed Arya 9. It's a fantastic A Clash of Kings chapter. It's one of the best ones. We only have one Arya chapter left, which will be her escape from Harrenhal. One of the best conclusions to any of the books for Arya. And I hope you guys all enjoyed.